Hello and welcome to episode 219 of Page One, the Writers Podcast. I'm Marco.
I'm Tarek.
And thanks for joining us on the podcast where we like to speak to writers of all kinds about their writing careers, find out how they got into the industry and try and get as many hints and tips from them as possible. And as I always say, we have a massive back catalogue of guests there. So if this is your first time listening to the podcast, please do check that out because we've had some amazing guests that frankly I'm amazed they even deigned to speak with us, but they have, and it's been recorded and you can listen to it. So please do go back and check those previous episodes, but only after you've listened to this week's guest.
Yes, indeed. This week we're chatting with the wonderful Frances White, who her debut novel, Voyage of the Damned, is out now in paperback. And it's a really wonderful book, a kind of mixed crossover book of sorts, really. I'd call it a murder mystery with magic, I think is quite a nice way to describe it.
Yeah, fantasy murder mystery. Which we have a bit of a discussion about that in the podcast, actually, about, you know, it as I say in the podcast, it doesn't seem that surprising to me that you can have different themes within the realm of a fantasy novel, really. But obviously publishers, as we know, are hugely risk averse, so they don't like anything that is vaguely
where would it sit on the shelf?
Exactly.
Eternal question.
Yeah, so we discussed that, and Voyage of the Damned obviously has been it was a big hit when it came out, but it's slightly unusual in the sense that it's almost grown in stature. The longer it's been out. It was a Waterstones book of the month in January this year, for example. So and it was rushed out in the US towards the end of last year. So huge success. So it's a great chat we have with Frances. So we'll get straight into it after a quick advert for a writer's notebook. But before we do, I have not one but two extra bits to say. Now, the first one, regular listeners will be aware of, is that we do have a Patreon. So you can support the podcast on the Patreon. You can get lots of benefits like early access to these episodes, very, very early access, months in advance, to our Drafting Notes episodes, which is our sister podcast. More about I guess Tarek and I talking about the craft or the issues that can arise when you're writing. Yes. You can get books, you can get notebooks, you can join our Discord and have a chat there. So please do check that out if you haven't already. But in addition to that, I also wanted to say that one half of this podcast has a book coming out next week as we record this. So it's not me, I know that, sadly. so it must be you. No, so your book, The Midnight King, which has already been, getting huge buzz from authors. I think Sarah Pinborough called it the best book she's read all year. And
I think she read it at the very end of last year. So it wasn't a January 1st read. Exactly.
And The Guardian, it was a Guardian crime and thriller book of the month.
Wonderful.
It was immensely disturbing, I think. It was the pull quote from that one.
Disgusting. Who banned this sick filth?
Exactly. So the reason I mention it now, not only is it out next week, so pre-order, grab that, but if you are in Edinburgh or the vicinity of Edinburgh and want to come to the launch, it is on Thursday the 10th at Blackwell's in Edinburgh, where I will be asking you a few questions about the book. I'm not going to spoil what they are now. I'm going to think of some good ones.
Any listeners nearby, come along, say hi, get a book signed to you. Wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can come along, get the book signed, and go and have a drink afterwards.
Importantly, come out have a pint in the pub afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. So that's happening. So we'll put links to that in the podcast description as well. But we have rambled on enough, so let's get straight into the episode, and we'll be back at the end of the podcast with a bit more chat and to let you know about next week's guest.
But for now, on with the podcast.
The blank page. To some, it's terrifying, an obstacle to overcome. But we prefer to think of it as an opportunity, a blank canvas to be filled with all of the adventures and characters in our head. So how to overcome that fear? Well, we all know the best advice for a writer is write. Seriously, get words on the page and more will follow.
But what about later, when you start trying to pull those threads of what you've written together? What about the character you wrote about way back at the start? Who was she again? What was she carrying? And where did she leave the MacGuffin that she now really needs in the third act? Think about all those top thrillers you like to read, or that amazing drama you just watched. What did they all have in common? Structure and planning.
As aspiring writers ourselves, we've tried many different methods to try and organise all the thoughts about the stories we want to tell. We've been there searching for a piece of scrap paper to note something down, or making a quick note on our phone in between meetings.
Or sometimes we'll make a note in whatever notebook we're carrying, or a document on our laptop so we don't forget that great idea. Let's be honest, it can all be a bit messy and it's easy to lose track of everything. And that's when we realised it's not just a story that needs structure and planning, but the way we gather all of our thoughts about it as well.
And so we made Page One. Page One is more than just another notebook. It's a place to put down all your ideas for your latest project, divided into easy-to-use sections that will help you plan your story, so that when that blank page comes calling, you're ready to answer. And then afterwards, once it's written, we realised you need to plan how to let people read it, so we included a section relating to submissions.
Each one is designed for one project, whether you want to write a book, screenplay, a comic, or any other kind of story. We truly believe that when you use it, it will help you get to the main event, writing your story. So we hope this helps.
We can't wait to read what you come up with.
And remember, every story starts with page one.
Did you always want to be a writer?
Not always. Well, from about the age of, I would say about 8. So I guess that's quite early.
That's pretty early. Yeah.
I think before that, I wanted to have been like a Pokemon trainer or something. It was the first quote unquote realistic job. I don't know how realistic it is, but yeah, that I ever since I wrote my first ever story, I was like, okay, yeah, this is what I want to do.
Because I think I read that you had struggled with reading as a child initially. But then sort of fell in love with it eventually.
Yeah, that's just because of my mum being very, very stubborn with me. Because reading was not easy for me at all. I did struggle, but she kept at it. And even though I was screaming like, please, I don't want to read. But then it suddenly, all clicked, and then I was away and I was reading. I used to when I was a kid live next door to a library, really near a library. Right. So it was like perfect. Yeah, I would read like 6 books in a day and be like, can we go back again?
So when did you start taking writing more seriously, I guess?
Oh, that's interesting. Probably I would say a little bit older. I was always planning stories in my head, but I didn't start properly writing them until I was in secondary school, so maybe 13, 14, that sort of age. And I was just sharing fanfics with my friends, so that's how it started.
I think everyone seemed. I remember writing Star Trek fanfic when I was a kid as well, and it seemed to be like the kind of the gateway into writing, isn't it? I guess it's easy characters, backstory.
You don't have to set up a world. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, all that's done for you. Yeah, exactly.
And you already have interested readers because it's harder to tell my original character, my original world compared to I know you like this thing. What are exactly this world?
But I know you wrote a handful of novels before, finding an agent and getting into that side of things. So how many novels did you write? Or what kind of stuff was it? Was it similar to what you've ended up writing with Voyage of the Damned, or was it just anything?
Well, my first novel was very different because it was a historical novel that was 250k.
Oh wow! Okay,
so
that is a first novel. Yeah,
that is definitely a first. Unedited. Oh, every word I write is important. So yeah, surprisingly, I didn't get an agent. But I did know at that point that I always wanted to write fantasy. So that's when my next few books were all fantasy. But I would say they were a bit darker maybe than Voyage of the Damned is, a bit more epic. Sort of. That was the time when grimdark was really big, so I was trying to be grimdark, which I'm not that good at. So I did that I did 2 books. So it was 3 books I wrote, and then I got my agent with my 4th book, which wasn't Voyage of the Damned, it was a different book.
Right, okay. And were you trying to find agents throughout that process then, with each book as you wrote it? Yeah,
it was 6 years of querying each book one by one and writing another one. And for the fantasy books, they were the first books of trilogies. So I was kind of like, I'm never going to be able to feel that feeling of finishing a story. Even with the one that I got my agent with, that was the first of a trilogy. And then we went on sub and I was like, I'll write something else because I don't want to write the next one because I just don't want to think about it because it's so stressful. So that's when I wrote Voyage of the Damned.
So I mean, how did you, obviously it's a tough process querying, just the act of querying, because everyone has their own little requirements. Every agent is slightly different or whatever, but also just psychologically it can weigh, especially if you're getting lots of rejections and stuff. So what kept you going in that period in terms of writing?
It was definitely the hardest period of writing, especially even when like going on sub and getting rejected was hard. And I think the main thing that kept me going was reminding myself that I just love what I love about writing for writing's sake rather than publishing. I tried to look at it as two different things, as in, okay, let's just enjoy the process of writing and then worry about the publishing part after I've written it, which is obviously not as easy to do as saying it, but you can kind of trick your mind a little bit into just focusing on the love of writing rather than the whole publishing all the voices at you.
I mean, you look back at those first books then, the ones that didn't get you anywhere. Can you see, why they didn't get anywhere compared to the stuff you've written now? What's your thoughts on those books?
See, I don't. For me, I think I improve with every book, so I do see faults with all my other books, but I don't necessarily think it's a thing where a lot of publishing is to do with luck, and it's not necessarily if you write an amazing book, you'll automatically get an agent or be published. But with those books, for me, I definitely, when I was writing Voyage of the Damned, I thought I found my stride with it. I felt like it was really something that I would write, that not necessarily. I wasn't trying to be someone else when I wrote it, which was what I felt more when I was writing the other books. I was trying to write whatever I felt would sell or what publishing would like. There's still bits of me in it, but Voyage of the Damned felt more like that's just a very me book.
Was that a conscious decision that you made? Was it a decision you made on your own, or was it a decision you made after speaking with your agent? I'm just interested what made you make that shift.
Yeah, it was a conscious decision I made on myself, because I started the idea of it when I was still creating the book before, just as I always try and think of the next thing, and it came from a place of just being really frustrated, like 6-7 years of querying and just not getting anywhere, and I was beginning to lose my love for writing because it was just so stressful, and the thought of it was just like, it's never going to get anywhere. So it really was just a book that I wrote, convincing myself that I do love writing, and just I put a long list of stuff that I love to write, and I was like, okay, I'm going to pick this and this and this and put it all in the book, and hopefully it will reignite my love for it.
It's interesting. Sorry, I was just going to say, it's interesting that Voyage of the Damned was the one that did get picked up, when it is the one that to you felt like the most genuine voice that you were writing. It sounds obvious in a lot of ways, but I think it can take writers a long time to try and find that thing that makes their writing unique and makes it something that they enjoy doing, and therefore it kind of translates to the reader as well.
Yeah, it's definitely a process. I wouldn't have got there without all the novels before, sort of, finding my own voice and stuff. And with Voyage, it still was a risk. Like, I think, it's cross-genre, so it's murder, mystery, fantasy. And I think now cross-genre is getting a bit more popular, but when I was queer on sub with it, it wasn't at all. It was like a risk, and that was a lot of reason why it got rejected by a lot of publishers. They said, we don't know where to put it because it's two things. So it wasn't necessarily an easy sell.
And the book that you got your agent with before Voyage of the Damned, I take it that book you went out on sub with it, but just didn't get anywhere with it. It kind of fell apart at that point.
We got to the point. The only thing we did have was a revise and resubmit from a publisher, but it was a massive rehaul of the whole manuscript, and they were the only publisher left, and I wasn't fully convinced with the edits, so I was like, I have a choice to either spend, it honestly would have taken at least 3 months to rewrite the whole book to what they wanted, or I can focus on this new book and write this. So that's the choice I made, which it did feel risky at the time, because I'm like, I'm turning down somebody who is interested in the
Yeah.
book that I'm writing.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah.
terrifying, but I thought I was more into Voyage, so
I think
that's
that's.
why.
I think you do have to listen to your inner. You know,
Yeah.
as a writer, you spend all your time in your head at your desk, and you can go a bit crazy. But I think you do need to listen to yourself sometimes, don't you? About what you think you're really clicking with, and as Marco said, it sounds like Voyage of the Damned is a book that is really you, and I think that probably does come through. I think when I remember someone saying to me, if you're writing something which you would love to read yourself, you know there's going to be a massive audience for that there, because it's there's no such thing as a small niche on the internet, etc. So if it's something you love to read, there'll be other folk who feel the same way. So being true to that, I think, is always the way to go, and I think that's definitely worked out. That plus, as you say, all the luck of timing, of just perseverance, and we said before in the podcast and chat to folk who have had similar lengths of journey and stuff, that it's the folk who don't get a publishing deal, the folk who stop trying. I do think it is just putting yourself out there again and again, and it is hard and brutal, but as you say,
I hope that's true.
Get there. I totally agree. I totally think
Speaking personally.
I totally think it's true. Honestly,
That's weird, because my friend, one of her mottos that she gave me that I kept thinking about during the journey was, you don't fail until you stop trying.
Well, I mean, obviously, the book that we were talking about, the one that was successful was The Voyage of the Damned, which, as we'll discuss in a moment, has been a huge success. But do you want to just tell listeners a bit about that book?
Yeah, so I describe it as a magical gay murder mystery cruise, and it follows 12 heirs of this empire called Concordia. I have it here, shiny.
nice.
They go on a 12-day voyage at sea to celebrate 1,000 years of peace, and one of the heirs gets murdered, and then they start dying off one by one, and it's up to our unlikely hero, who is the only one without magic, who has to work out what's going on and investigate.
Nice. And it was a big hit when it came out. I mean, it's been out it came out Jan 2024 in hardback. It's out now in paperback. And, I mean, you look at the list of stuff that it hit. It was like Sunday Times bestseller. It was Watterson's SFF Book of the Month in January just there. You got your foreign rights, your Lumicrate box. I mean, after all that process to get to where you to get it out, it must have been an amazing feeling of like recognition, and you feeling you've made it, all this stuff happening. Fantastic.
Yeah, it is surreal. It still doesn't really register. It sort of vaguely registers, but I'm just like, really? Every time I'm so shocked, especially the Book of the Month. I was not expecting that at all.
Yeah.
I kind of I hoped, always hoped.
Yeah.
But when they said it, I was like, oh my gosh, okay. And that really did help. It helped push it out. Obviously, Waterstones is so massive, so.
Yeah, and it is a bit of a, in a way, like your career as a writer, it was a bit of a slow burn success, I guess, with Voyage of the Damned. It seems to be getting bigger and bigger the longer it's been out, which is, it's quite rare, that, because often, the books will make a big splash when they land, and then they'll disappear off the shelves. But for it to be, picked as Watterson's Book of the Month in January just passed, so that's a year after it came out and things like that. That's huge, so it really has grown arms and legs, and it must be, it validates all those decisions that you made, I guess, that you were unsure about. Will I rework that other book, or will I work on this one, and things like that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think in a way, it was helped by, so initially when we sold, we didn't sell to the US. They weren't interested at all. So it wasn't until it came out over here and started to gain a bit of momentum that they were like, okay, a publisher got interested. So then it had sort of another release in August. So it kind of kept the momentum going.
Yeah.
And I think readers really help word of mouth as well. Keep it going. Publishers can push it at the beginning, but readers keep it
definitely
in the consciousness.
And I think on the surface, I mean, you said already just there that it was it's a risky book in some ways, and it's especially, I guess, looking at it from a marketing point of view, because you've got these two kind of genres, like kind of murder mystery and magic, crossing over. And as you say, when it first came out and you were pitching it, etc., it was less of a thing. It was kind of a bit. I could see it being a risk, especially publishers who like to put things in a box and like to know how to market things and where it was in a shelf, etc., and your comps. So I mean, I take it that must have put a lot of publishers off when you're going through the submission process. Was that a lot of the feedback you were getting? Was that, oh, we love it, but we don't know what we do with it, type of thing?
Yeah, definitely in the US, they I don't, in my experience, seem a little bit more risk averse. They want it to fit neatly. So that was basically the main reason over there. And in the UK, it's interesting that most of the publishers who rejected me are like SFF only, and the one who bought it and the one in the US publish other genres as well. So they also publish crime or romance and stuff. So I don't know if that made them a little bit more open-minded to it, or I'm not sure why, but that's the way it's worked out. So
it's funny because, I don't know. I've always thought of, there's no reason that a fantasy story can't have another layer to it, like a murder mystery or a heist book, or a political. You get political fantasy books. You get like war, military type fantasy books. You get, so it is, but then so much of publishing makes me confused. So maybe
I
this
agree,
isn't
though.
a surprise.
I think the kind of sci-fi and fantasy stuff that I like the most is when it is kind of blended with another genre, and it's not just a straight up like epic sci-fi or whatever. It's actually got like the Gone World or something where you've got like a police kind of crime element to it, and it's time travel. There's some kind of other layer. I think that's much more interesting when you've got that blending of two genres.
And it's a strange thing because if you look at other media, the most successful, or a lot of the successful like SF films or series are exactly that. They're mixing genres and they're telling these complicated stories, and people love it. But publishers do seem to be, as an industry, much more risk averse.
Yeah, I always think fantasy is like the sand in the sandbox. So you can play, you can make whatever you want.
That's a good way
You
to
can
look at it.
basically put any genre onto it.
I think I agree with that. Yeah, and it's a good way to get folk in, right? Like if you were a crime reader who didn't read much fantasy, but you're like, oh, a murder mystery, I like that part of it, and it's a kind of gateway, isn't it? And maybe you're like fantasy, you don't have read much crime before. Again, you can kind of get this kind of in the back door, get new readers in. It seems like you'd almost appeal to two different massive pools of readers.
Although I do see that, like, I think it could be difficult, if someone that reads a lot of crime books that are your sort of police procedural Ian Rankin type books, maybe thinks in their head, oh, I don't want to read fantasy. Even though the story being told in the fantasy book might be exactly the type of story, this sort of thing that they like.
I suppose that's probably right. Yeah.
So
there's definitely a contingent of readers who I've heard from who have never read fantasy, who this was their first one, sort of a gateway into it. But I do think you need to be a little bit open to the speculative, because obviously it's magic. It's not like a crime like you can assess from DNA or fingerprints or whatever. It's there is that element to it. So
it's interesting because I've just read recently The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett, which is very much like
that.
It's really good. It's like Sherlock Holmes essentially in a fantasy setting almost.
Cool.
So which is, again, maybe wouldn't have been published a few years ago, but they seem to be more open to these types of stories.
I'm seeing more and more of them come out, which is really exciting because I want to read them. I wrote it because I want to read more stuff like that. So it's
well, you've obviously got the big wave started behind you now. You've obviously the first one. Trendsetter, exactly. And a big part of the book, which I think is obviously important to yourself and is connected really well with readers, is the kind of representation part of the book. So especially the kind of queer representation. And I wondered from your point of view, why was that important to bring into the book, and what is your view of the current status of queer representation in books at the moment?
Well, for me, it wasn't really like a conscious thought, because I'm in that community. I can't imagine writing a book where everyone's just white and straight and, cis. To me, it doesn't represent the world that I'm in. So I want to represent the world, especially because in this, it's meant to be an entire empire. I really want to make it feel as diverse and inclusive as possible. And in this, it's queer friendly. There's no homophobia or anything. And I just wanted to create a little safe space, because the world, as we know at the moment, is definitely going downhill in that regard. So I didn't want to write about it, to be honest. It being I didn't want to write about homophobic stuff or anything like that. I just wanted to escape in this world, and I think readers have connected with that as well. I think in general, representation in books has is definitely improving, especially in the UK. It's getting pretty good, slowly, slow steps. I worry about the US and what's going to happen over there with book banning. So we'll see. It's sort of we don't know at the moment, but we could always use more representation, especially from black writers. Queer writers are doing well, but I think we need more authors of colour coming in as well.
It's interesting though, especially in a fantasy book, because I think there has been traditionally a certain segment of the fandom of that genre that are very resistant to representation of things that aren't white cis male stories. I just think of some of the casting choices in things like Wheel of Time or something like that people get up in arms about, and all this sort of stuff. So it is good to see that slowly these things are being pushed, because at the end of the day it's about the story, and I've never really personally understood what the issue is, as long as the story's a good thing. But
especially in fantasy, it's
exactly.
not real life. It's literally a magical world.
I can accept this goblin, but I can't accept
I know, right?
This king could be black or something like that. It's nonsense.
So just in general, I guess with films and games as well, you see any representation as sort of an attack on them for some reason, when it's not. It's just being inclusive. And to be honest, if someone is like that, they probably won't like my book. So I'm not that bad. It's not for them. So, but
it does feel like that is starting to change. So I think, like we've talked before about the David Copperfield movie, the Armando Iannucci one, the kind of the colourblind casting.
Of I've seen that. That's good.
And after a few minutes of thinking this doesn't make sense, you kind of forget anything, and even the fact that logically that he can't be his dad because of different color. It doesn't matter, and it does go a long way to show. I think even in real world settings, you can easily move past that completely. I think so. I think there's interesting stuff happening. I think it is moving very slowly, as you say. I don't know if America will maybe put the brakes on that a little bit.
That's my concern.
Well, we hope not, but we'll see. But I wanted to ask as well about, obviously it was picked for the Illumicrate box, and we've spoken to some other authors about it. It seems to be a big thing, especially for fantasy, these boxes, which is a fairly recent development, I think. But do you think that if your book gets picked for a box like this, that can really help that initial push with the book?
Oh, 100%. Because of so it's like sort of behind the scenes, because of the order numbers, you're almost guaranteed to get in the bestseller list, especially in the UK, because you don't have to sell that many in the UK to get on, depending on the week. Sometimes there's really horrible, tough weeks. But the initial push for me was definitely, it got it into so many people's hands who wouldn't have picked it up otherwise. And I've been told that by readers, or like I hadn't heard of it before, or never would have thought of picking up a murder mystery. I'm not already into them, and then suddenly it's one of their favorite books. So I think that initial visibility is really helpful, especially for a debut. And I know Illumicrate does a lot of debut books and books from marginalized authors as well, which is really nice. But that was like a dream come true to me, because I'd been a subscriber for Illumicrate for over a year before it happened, just because I love their books and everything. And it happened really quickly for me. I sold we did the deal on, I think it was a Thursday, and by the Monday we had the Illumicrate offer to pick up the book, which was just for me really comforting, because I was like, okay, at least I have that. It's really nervous as a debut author. I was like, okay, I've got that's something to cling to. That's something good. So it is a big boost, definitely.
And I wanted to ask about your process. When you sit down to actually write a book, what are you someone who sits and does a lot of planning? Do you pants it through? Do what's your kind of looking at edits? What's
especially when you're writing a murder mystery as well?
You must do have more planning than.
Have you got like strings joining things?
So I kind of put myself in the middle of planning and pantsing. I plan to a certain degree, but then I would say like the major things, like this is the ending. I always know what the ending's going to be, and this is something that's going to happen. But then I hit a brick wall where I have to write it out to sort of figure it out. So I guess I have the signposts, but how to get between them, I'm not sure what that journey is going to be until I write it. So my first draft, it's kind of a discovery draft, I guess. I never edit as I go. I just write the whole thing and don't read a single sentence back because I'll just go, oh God. It's not good. But yeah, with the murder mystery, there was a lot of spreadsheets. I have so many spreadsheets. I was trying to work stuff out. There's one that's because there's 12 characters and it's 12 days. It's like all the characters along the top and all the days and what they're all doing on each, like 1/3 of a day, because that's how the book's split, 1/3 of the day each chapter. And and mapping where all they are, so like nobody's accidentally where a murder's happening when they're not meant to be, and trying to keep track of all these different clues.
Is that something you did in the initial drafting, or did you look at that in the editing process more?
That was after the initial draft. Yeah. The initial draft literally like, okay, there will be a clue in this chapter. I don't know what it is yet, but there's a clue here. And that's about it. I kind of it's very, very brief. Yeah,
sort
of just try and get the skeleton of the story down
and
then build it up.
Because I think my worry about, I've said this before, but my worry about over planning stuff is that it kind of because it sucks the kind of fun out of the actual writing and the kind of discovery of it. And but I can see when you're doing something as kind of regimented and as jigsawy as that, it needs to be properly planned out and for it to slot together properly. But I would imagine if you had that, if you planned it out and then tried to write a first draft, for me, I would struggle. I think to get going. I think I would need that kind of uncertainty floating around to kind of keep me pushed forward, if that makes sense.
The first draft was definitely more like character focused. Like I was focusing on the character arc and the journey, and the murder mystery was there and people were dying, but in terms of all splitting together, no, it did that afterwards. It makes me look clever, like I planned it all along. And all the hints.
That's the skill. Is to make it all look smooth and planned from the start. That's it. Yeah. But and I want to ask about as well, the importance of, especially for a debut author maybe, but the importance of sort of engaging with readers and things like using social media and things like that, which I think you engage quite well with your reading community and stuff. Is that something that comes naturally to you, or is it something that you're sort of making a conscious effort to try and do because it's part of the job of a writer these days?
I love interacting with readers, so it's not like, it doesn't feel like a job. Readers who are nice to me, if they tag me negative, interact, you just quietly move away from that. But all the positive ones, I get lots of really lovely messages, especially through my contact form on my website, where people have told me what it means to them, like the representation and everything. And it's a joy to read those messages and respond and say thank you. It's hard to know what to say other than thanks. What I say, but the fans have been really the readers.
Yes, your website has a whole bunch of really cool kind of fan art that people have sent you and you host. And that must be amazing. Not only people saying to you, "Loved your book," blah blah blah, but actually spending time to draw some art or to create some art based on your book. That's amazing.
It's surreal. It's like that's all I ever wanted. I never really cared about like winning awards or making certain lists or anything. All I wanted was like people who really connected. I loved the book, like a fandom, I guess, in a way. But some of it has been somebody has tattooed the cover, like the fish on the cover.
Oh wow!
On their body, which blows my mind. Like I didn't even do that. I was like, that's a big commitment. They did it. I was just like, oh my gosh,
that's amazing. Yeah, that must be a great feeling. And so obviously Voyage of the Damned been huge. What is next? What's coming next?
So my next book, which I recently announced, is called The Bone Door, and it's out in early 2026. And it's basically, I call it a fantasy escape room. It's about a bunch of kids who wake up without their memories in this strange labyrinth. And to escape, they have to go through different rooms and solve impossible tasks in each room, which is like a different realm, each room, to make their way out to the Bone Door.
I like it.
Sounds like another kind of clashing of genres then,
Yeah.
kind of
Yep.
thrillery, kind of.
There's a lot of horror in there.
Horror,
meets,
Yeah.
exactly.
Saw meets Lord of the Rings.
That sounds cool. So what stage is that at in terms of your process? Like, are you at the editing stage or what's happening there?
So I've written it and it's gone to my editor once, then come back to me, and then it's gone back to her again. So it's sort of mid-edit. But now the US are involved because I'm sort of dealing with both editors at once, so that's scary. I've never done that before. So.
Yeah, so I mean, so I find that quite interesting. How does that work then? When you've got both editors from across the pond, at the same time, will it result in two slightly different books, or will both editors kind of sign off on the book so you have one finished product that they're both happy with?
It'll be one finished book. That this is the first time this has happened, so I'm still learning. From what I can gather, it's the UK has looked at it and she's made her notes. Then the US will look at it and she'll make her notes, and then they'll collate them together in a document. And apparently they might not always agree, so I guess I just pick whichever I prefer. So we'll see. I'll see when I get it, hopefully soon, and then they'll have to. It'll be the same book basically, except with a few.
But different covers probably. The US loves a different cover from the.
Because
UK.
For this one, I had the same for US and UK.
Did it? Okay.
Well, the US was a really rushed release. Apparently, they'd never rushed out a book so quick because get it out at ASAP. So I guess that's why they had the same ones. I'm hoping for two covers just because I really want different.
Yeah, exactly. Different editions is always cool. And what about further on? Have you thought about the next one? Are you writing the next one? What's happening with that?
Yeah, I'm currently writing the next one, which is weird when I've never written two books at once like this before. So I'm editing the other one, but I can't say much about it yet. But it's I describe it as Bridgerton meets Squid Game with magic.
Nice.
Okay. That's a good pitch. I like it.
Yeah. It's like it's just three. You've got three genres smashing together now. I like this.
Yeah, exactly. Eventually, I'll write a book with every genre.
Yeah. And you said at the start the stuff that you wrote before you got to Voyage of the Damned was always the kind of first of a trilogy. Would you want to go back and try and write a big epic 3-part story?
Right now, I'm loving writing standalones. It's very satisfying to finish it in one book. But if I was going to write a series, I think maybe a duology is more appealing.
Yeah.
So take it slow. But I think I would have to have the right story to fit doing that. So I don't want to force it. But standalones are good and they're easy to pitch. You're just like, it's just one book. It's just one.
That's right.
Something to read.
It's all in here. Exactly. What was the last book that you read?
Oh, the last book I read was an arc. So let me go for something that's actually out, which is the last book I read was Don't Let the Forest In by C.J. Drews.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that one. Yeah,
Cool.
It's a YA horror, and which I haven't really read that much YA, but it was very good. Yeah, the writing, it's just, and it was really creepy, but it also made me want to write horror. So
Nice.
It's interesting, like YA. It is just a genre thing that people have decided because they're often adults enjoy them as much as young adults.
Oh yeah,
and I think whenever I think people say YA, I think maybe it kind of conjures up images of like simpler stories or not very complex themes, but not at all. Like often it's just as complex or scary, etc. as an adult book. I find it really interesting the kind of how they define.
It didn't exist as a genre when I was that age.
I know.
You definitely had books obviously for younger kids, what they now call middle grade, I guess. But when I was 13, 14, you were picking up Stephen King. It didn't matter what things.
I think it would just begun when I was that age because I remember there being like one small bookshelf with like some sort of YA books, but at the moment I just feel like a lot of it is just where publishers think it will sell best.
Yeah.
Because some of it, mine's definitely sort of crossover. It could probably fit in either, but one with adults. So,
what about the last film that you watched?
Oh, you know what I watched yesterday? I rewatched Shutter Island.
Oh, I love
brilliant.
that film. Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't watched it in so long, so I watched it and I was like, this is just so good.
And it's a film that gets better, I think, the more.
Yeah.
I've seen it twice, and I enjoyed it more second time when you know the ending. And
I'd read the book before I saw the film.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Well, the book is good as well, but obviously the book is a book that would work again better if you read it the second time because of everything that you know.
Is it the same?
It was like that. It's not quite the same, but a lot of them are the same.
Yeah. Okay.
And it was like that with the film as well. You just notice things happening in the background or throwaway lines or something, and it just works on a second viewing, which I think is such a skill because it also works in a first viewing. You know what I mean?
But it has a totally
yeah. So
and that the very end of the film when Leo kind of says that
spoiler.
line, I won't spoil it, but the way the kind of unsaid reveal is so well done. It's such a risky thing to do because it's all in the way he says it and stuff. It's so good. Yeah, I love it. I'm gonna watch it again. You've totally got me excited.
Got you in the mood for it.
Yeah. It's been years since I've seen it. Now I'm gonna watch it again.
What about the last, or what are you watching on TV at the moment? I guess
I'm watching what everyone's watching, which is Severance.
That's
the one thing I am watching at the moment. I was obsessed with The Traitors, if you want a different answer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, actually, we were discussing The Traitors on the Discord that we're both on, in fact. Yeah, exactly. The Traitors was good. I enjoyed this series of The Traitors.
Yeah. I love anything that's like death gamey or anything like that, so...
I like the kind of bringing in more kind of like the seer and stuff, more gamey things. I felt, which is I quite like that kind of.
I don't think it worked as it should have done. But...
No, as you said, identifying who the seer was the issue because you just don't trust them anymore at that point. Like,
I don't think it should be revealed who it is.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do with that next season. But yeah, no, I do love a bit of The Traitors, I have to say.
Well, the very, very last thing we do is a super quick fire either or. No right answer to any of these apart from the last one, which is very important to me. But let's go for murder mystery or fantasy.
Fantasy. Yes. Am I meant to elaborate or just say
no? That's fine. Okay. TV or cinema?
TV.
Okay.
Night owl or early bird?
Early bird.
Music or no music when you're writing?
Music.
And let's go for the last one. Real book or ebook?
Real book.
Oh, that was incorrect.
Was that the wrong answer?
Wrong answer. We'll just
it's the right answer because it's the answer 95% of people given the podcast. But Tarek,
nobody ever picks ebook. So I've taken it on myself just to kind of champion the ebook. Poor defenseless ebook.
You're doing a terrible job at it.
Or an ebook, if that makes you feel better.
A little bit.
Well, thanks very much to Frances for coming on to the podcast. I really enjoyed that chat, and she's reminded me that Shutter Island is a brilliant film. I must watch it again.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure we've said this before on the podcast, but it is one of those films that you watch twice, and it does feel like a different film the second time around.
Yeah, and that, as I just said there, the book is exactly the same, and I think there's a brilliant skill in being able to do that. To write something that changes and rewards you again on a second reading or a second viewing or something like that is sort of genius level writing as far as I'm concerned.
No, I agree. I think so many times a twist or a reveal at the end of something like that feels either unearned or it's been like you've been manipulated in a way to keep the truth from being hidden. I think for it to feel like a complete film one way and then to feel like another complete film another way is so difficult. The Sixth Sense did it as well, I feel. Successfully.
Yeah, exactly.
It similarly makes you go back and review the whole film in a different light. And it's hard to do though.
Yeah, it is. It's hard to do it well. I think that's definitely true. So just picking up on some of what Frances was saying there, and what I was saying about, she felt that she wanted to write this book, which she calls it a queer murder mystery, and with magic or whatever, and it's obviously been well received, which is good to hear because there are definitely aspects of the fandom of fantasy novels that are very resistant to, that sort of thing sometimes. At the same time, fantasy, there's other aspects of fandom that are massively welcoming and find comfort in this space as well. So I'm not wanting to tar a whole community with that brush.
But I mean,
you
look at Star Wars and some of these fandoms which are, because they become quite toxic, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
And it is dangerous. Dangerous is the wrong word, but it's easy, I think, to get caught up in whatever reason, but it turns against you or it picks on something it doesn't like, and it becomes this focal point, and it just ruins the whole thing.
It's that idea that it's like you say, it turns against you. They take it very personally, as if it's against them, when it isn't. It's trying to be more inclusive. That's the point. It's trying to open these stories to more people. So it's up. Apart from all of that, Voyage of the Damned is just a great, fun murder mystery. So do go and pick that one up, and look forward to our next book coming out. I think this year. I think she said. I'm not sure. If not, next year. So. If not, I think it is this year though. But next week, we are speaking with another fantasy author.
Yes, indeed. We're chatting with the wonderful Robert Jackson Bennett next week of the Tainted Cup fame, which came out last year and was a pretty massive success, I believe.
Yeah. Well, it was a huge success, and it's just another really fun book. And actually, following on from Francis, it's another crossover type book, which is... it's essentially Sherlock Holmes in a fantasy setting. It's got a Sherlock Holmes type character. It's got a Watson type character. It's got a sort of ingenious murder mystery element going on with it as well. So as we speak, we have not yet recorded this episode with Robert, but I'm really looking forward to speaking with him and asking him about how he came up with that, and also. His new book, A Drop of Corruption, is actually released this week at the time of recording, so we can ask him about that as well. Yep.
Obviously, if our next episode is not speaking with Robert, something's gone horribly wrong.
Yes, indeed.
Him and Mark have had a massive fight, and the podcast was called off halfway through.
Indeed. Yes, exactly. I actually have just sent him an email just to check the times, because the clocks have just changed, and so that may muck up the recording times. But
it will not have gone down well with them. He's probably
hopefully that will be okay. As I said at the start of the podcast, we do have a Patreon. If you want to support us, please do check that out. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take the time to rate and review us in your favourite podcast app, as that helps us to continue to get great guests on the podcast. If you also enjoyed the episode, I would also ask, give us a thumbs up or leave a comment on YouTube. You can get all these episodes on YouTube, and that again helps us massively with the mysterious YouTube algorithm as well.
Nobody understands. But, if you would like to send us an email, of course you can always drop us an email to the email address, which is podcast@rightgear.co.uk. Search us out on all the social medias, and drop us a YouTube comment. Come onto our Discord. I'm not sure if anyone can hear that in the background. My bathroom's being redone, and they've chosen this exact half-hour slot to really go to town on the walls.
Well, we almost got to the end of the podcast.
That's true. But yes, please do get in touch any way you'd like. We are, join the Patreon, come on the Discord, have a chat with us, email us, tweet us, fleet us, whatever the Skeeters? What's a fleet?
That's a new thing. You've invented a new social network. I like it.
What do you call it? A skeet? Is that a blue sky?
Apparently, it's a skeet. Yeah,
it's never gonna work. Never gonna catch it.
People don't like it, but there you go. That's what it is. But in the meantime, have a great week, and we will speak to you next episode.
See you later.
Well, we hope you enjoyed that episode. If you did, be sure to hit that thumbs up button and hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode like these ones down here.
And if you want to get in touch, you can do so by finding us on our social media platforms up here, or drop us a comment way down below there.
But otherwise, thanks for listening, and join us for the next episode.
See you later.